What's poppin', everybody? Hello and welcome to Popcorn Culture. My name is Ben Carlin, and I am your host. Here with me today is my brother Jay, who will be in every episode.
I am here, Ben, and let me just be the first to say happy anniversary.
I know, it's wild and unbelievable that our podcast has more anniversaries than my marriage does.
Wow. That is weird.
It's like,
that's unusual.
It is unusual, yeah. So that's very, I mean, like, you know, obviously SCB we've been doing for so long.
So
you know,
long.
Like that.
That has more anniversaries than my marriage.
Yeah, right. Oh my gosh. Shattered our whole universe. But yeah, so the first few episodes, I think we uploaded 3 episodes on Christmas Day in 2019.
Yeah, yes.
So rather unbelievable span of years since then. So basically since 2019, Christmas 2019, I promptly got married on January 6th of 2020. You had your twin boys on February 23rd.
February 23rd.
Right. And
2020.
then we promptly went into a just jolly pandemic.
A jolly pandemic, Ben.
For a proper 2 years.
One of the jolliest I've ever lived through, really.
I mean...
Which is to say it matches all adjectives because it is also the only one I've lived through. Thus, the bar is low.
It is exceedingly
honestly,
low.
I hope it's the jolliest pandemic I've ever lived through, if I'm being honest.
That's a good point.
You know?
That's a good point. Throughout the course of the rest of forever.
Yes.
Yeah, then, no, I completely agree with you. It can just hold on to that title forever.
It can have it.
As the most jolly good pandemic.
Right.
Which is to say it was the worst.
Which is to say it was the worst.
But either way, also during that time, had Addison, which was very exciting.
Yes,
who is now over a year old.
Who is walking, I believe.
She is. Oh my gosh. Everybody says it, and you know, it's the most, like we've known it was coming. Like, you know, everybody keeps talking about like all the reading you do is like somewhere between like 10 and like 16 months or something like that is like typically when it'll happen, and she's like coming up on 15 months next week. And everybody kept saying, like, you know, like when she takes her first, like, you know, couple of steps, it just like compounds from there, and she basically is just like fully mobile all at once. And I, you know, in my head I kept seeing her like stand on her own, but like really was unable to take a step, like, you know, like sort of with like one leg forward and then was down. And it's so funny how it just does exactly what everybody says it was going to do. It's like she got that first couple steps down, and then it was like 2, 3, you know, and then like 8, and then like 15. You know, just, you're just moving.
You're just moving.
You are just moving.
Well, here's what's going to happen too: is as soon as she figures out running, there will be no going back either.
Oh,
right.
Yeah,
you know, you'll just be running everywhere
all the time.
All the time. Why would you walk anywhere? That's ridiculous.
Full speed all the time and always, and no other years.
This is faster. Kids figure it out. You know, they're just like, okay, so this would be one way to do it, but I could be there faster, so why wouldn't I be? I'll run everywhere. Always.
I'm going to call it the Go-Kart Principle, which is effectively, if you're ever with your group of friends and you're doing go-karts at like, you know, like an amusement area or whatever, at least in my personal experience, it has always been the case that the strategy is just always all the way down.
Always all the way down.
As fast as it can be going, as often as you can be going, in every single direction. It is capable of turning at top speed.
It is capable of turning at top speed, and if there's a better way to go-kart, it's quite possible you could, you know, finesse it and be like a way better go-kart driver. But the fact is, you and your friends don't go-kart enough to be that good. So
also
in the meantime, pedal to the metal.
Pedal to the metal.
Pedal to the metal, man.
It's the one strategy. It's the most simplest.
Yep.
And just a hooting and hollering good time. I honestly wish we were doing a lot more go-karting than we currently are.
Well, I've always felt that about my life.
Yeah,
that, you know, whatever amount of go-kart, even when I was go-karting at my max, I don't feel like it was enough. Which used to say like maybe once a week or something.
Was there a time in your life where you were go-karting once a week?
There was a time when we were growing up when the batting cages down in Rocky Mount added the go-karts.
I remember that.
And you know, when you're in the middle of the summer and you know you need something to do on the weekends with the kids, that where you know you're the parents and you just want to hang out with the other parents and they can go wild for a while. Like I think the batting cages, it was a really good batting cage setup at Rocky Mountain. I wonder if it's still there. But
should we go?
Man, dude, I would not go.
Sometimes I do. This is the oddest thing. 'Cause we were never really like baseball players.
No, not
growing
at all.
up, like,
Not at all.
Barely even t-ball. And yet sometimes I have this internal yearning to just like go to a batting cage and just swing.
Look, just because baseball isn't fun doesn't mean whacking a ball with a bat isn't fun.
Well, this is true.
You know,
this is extremely true.
Yeah, right.
You know, even on that note, it's the same thing as going and hitting golf balls.
Yeah,
which is
Oh,
another one of those
yes.
activities. Like, it's fairly inexpensive. You've like never done it with like, you know, a significant other or something like that. It's like go to the driving range.
Yeah,
And just wail.
just boom.
You don't have to be good at it.
They don't have to be good at it.
It's like nobody's really watching, and really it's just like you versus yourself, because there's like really I don't know how Top Golf works, but there's no points.
There's points in Top Golf.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I don't know how
okay.
Top Golf works. So
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, you just wail.
Yeah.
That's the entire strategy. Anyway, so I don't know how we got on this from Addison's first steps to go-karts and hitting balls.
Oh, because when you're a kid, you start running and then you're pedal to the metal, which is how you go-kart. And there were go-karts at the batting cages. So
do you feel as though from age 15 months, let's just assume approximately the same time, when little Jonathan Carlin started running,
Sure.
do you feel as though you've continued high speed ever since?
No, don't think so. Yeah,
You-
eventually at some point you're just like, I don't know. But here's the thing, maybe we're wrong. You know, like maybe we adults should just be like running everywhere.
Just everywhere.
Just all the time. Like, it sounds ridiculous. I know. But like, this is when you're a child, this is innate to you. No one has to teach you to run everywhere. You just do it.
You just know that it's the right way to live.
You just know it's the right way to. This is okay. I was thinking about this yesterday because when we were at the gym, our trainer Gabriel will play music, you know, to get you pumped up in the morning.
Obviously,
you know. And right now, like, Addison is there with us, and then his kids are there with us, Calvin and Selena. And sometimes music will come on that just like totally jives with them, and you can just see them over there. All of a sudden, they're just like breaking down. They're just like dancing.
I want to say a shout out to Selena is that, like, yes, I think where you're about to go with the rest of that sentence is that like dancing is like innately inside of you, right?
Yes, that is what I'm saying. It's like I've witnessed this across like lots of kids now. Like even like my kid, Luke, Nick, Nate, all of them. You start playing music, kids will dance. They do not need to be taught. They do not need to know what music is. It just comes out of them.
So maybe
you know?
maybe this is like even a good test, because we've talked a lot on this show about how I have this sort of like this like absolute resistance to dancing.
Yes.
So it's like what that tells me is that like I have built, is the inhibition the right word? Like such a high level of like unwillingness to allow myself to just feel the music.
Right, you're just shutting down your natural born instincts as a human being.
Right.
Yeah.
So like the question is, how do I break down those barriers? Maybe
You
more
just gotta start going for it, I think.
of Miley Cyrus's Wrecking Ball.
There's that. There's Party in the USA.
Yeah, but
know?
Wrecking Ball, breaking down walls.
Yeah,
You see
breaking
what
down
I'm-
walls.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was making a thing there.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I was thinking.
Plus, it's a bop,
Right,
as
yep.
Ethan the editor would say.
I would argue that Party in the USA also encourages dancing and is a bop.
Well, okay,
You
that's
know?
a good point.
So maybe what I'm hearing is way more Miley in your life.
just that's
way more Miley.
Apparently, that's what we need. Is
That's
way more
what we
Miley.
need. So Ben's 2023 New Year's resolution is to have his Spotify end of year recap involve at least 3 Miley Cyrus songs.
Oh my gosh! Can you? Everybody send me your best Miley playlists.
There you go.
And I'm gonna make that the playlist of 2023.
There
It's
you
just
go.
nothing but I'm gonna become a huge Miley Cyrus fan. It's like, man, I started. You know when I started living? When Miley arrived.
That's right.
Well, actually, 10 years after that. but
Yeah, it was like, just never been around. Maybe you've heard of Hannah Montana and stuff like that.
I've heard of it. I've heard of it.
It's come up.
Yeah.
Weird. It's one of those like huge Disney things that happened for a while that you and I just completely turned a blind eye to when it was happening.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
There's like eras of life, or I've thought about this a whole bunch of times too. Is like the fact that when we started Super Carlin Brothers, I had not read Deathly Hallows yet. Like,
Oh, right, yeah.
Do you remember that? Like,
Yeah,
and it was
yes.
like a thing for a while that like I had actually like not finished this story. And it's like, to me now, like where I'm sitting, I can see multiple copies of that book, like just out in the room in front of me.
Right.
And it's like, how did it come to pass that my life now has so much to do with this like fictional magical world?
Yeah.
And yet 10 years ago, as like already, a 23-year-old in life, I hadn't even hadn't even gotten there yet.
Yeah, and it had been out for like several years at that point.
Absolutely.
It wasn't like, oh, it came out earlier this year. I just haven't gotten to it yet.
Right. Yeah. No, I'd gone through like all of college with successfully like never reading it.
Yeah. And but having read the previous 6.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really unusual.
Yeah. Just like sort of tripped right there at the finish line.
So I want to tangent from here because I feel like this is a good opportunity to bring up a topic that I thought of over the weekend. And I was like, as soon as I thought of it, I was telling Alice about it. I was like, man, I think this is very, very interesting.
Okay.
And what got me here, so I can start before I like get too far away without ever like coming back to my original point, is that we talk a lot about the GMA here, and in high school it was the case that I was the youngest member of the GMA. So
it's still the case.
It's yes, yeah. It shockingly still hasn't changed.
Yeah,
unless
true. You count like extended members, which I suppose include spouses and children.
Well, that's true. But the original,
the core 4,
as
it
were.
Yeah,
the core 4. Yeah, we got a title now. The core 4. Here. So it was the case that when I was a sophomore, John and Mike were juniors, and you were a senior.
Yeah.
Which sort of then there was this like couple of interesting stair-stepping years where everybody was then sort of doing like the going to college, like separating, going in slightly different directions type thing.
Yeah.
But it meant that I was left in high school by myself with like my 3 best friends having basically like graduated away from me.
Mm-hmm.
And it meant that very interestingly at this like now, like kind of capstone year of like your youth, I didn't have like a core group of friends anymore.
Yeah.
And I sort of like found myself like oddly like lonely for like my senior year of high school.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, I sort of like kind of branched out, and I ended up finding like a group of guys that I would hang out with a lot. And we all got into like some of the same activities together, like cars and stuff like that. So I got really into cars for a little while.
Okay.
But I've always felt like that year of my life is this weird like pivot point. It was like a hinge as to like where like the trajectory of my life I feel like shifted a little bit because a lot changed all during this like very important moment of my life.
Okay.
Like a lot of decisions about like where I would go and how I would do things and like which college I chose and everything
were like dictated by this like core group of friends you made during like the 1 year like me and John and Mike weren't around.
Right, exactly. And realistically, like I was pretty well committed to like the college that I went to as of December of my senior year. So we're talking about like 3 months of effectively like not having you and John and Mike in like my immediate proximity.
Yeah.
When I'm pretty much making like this next decision, and that decision ended up being heavily influenced by this brief 3 months, basically, is what it really came down to.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've thought was very interesting is there's like websites like Ancestry.com or something where you can go through and find out like based on sort of like genetic material or whatever, you can trace your heritage in the world.
Yeah.
So ours is not especially interesting. We're like largely from like Ireland.
I think mostly. Yeah, like Ireland and Poland.
Yeah. So there's not like a whole. There's not like a. I was so excited when we did it for the first time because I was like, I can't wait to see like all the things you would never expect. And I was like, no, it was pretty much just exactly what you would expect. A couple little green dots on a map.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
we are very non-diverse.
Yeah,
Hello, we are white.
Grandma and Grandpa pretty much told us this.
Yeah.
So that's that. But what I thought would be very, very, very interesting is if you were to take that model and apply it to the people who have had the most like influence on your life.
Yeah.
And so you could sort of like go through and figure out like which people that you have known have influenced your life the most. And it's like, it doesn't even necessarily mean like for better, for worse, like in any like one direction. It could just sort of be like, like every once in a while you meet someone who ended up just being like a little bit of like a gateway into like a line of thinking.
Yeah.
Or like introduced you to something that like, like for example, even like rock climbing for a big chunk of my life ended up being like this really prominent thing. It felt like the center of like my being.
Yeah.
It was the only thing I thought about. It was the only thing I wanted to do. I was like, dedicating like all of like my energy, whether it was like, eating, resting, you know, like
finishing the workday early.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like everything came down to like, how am I going to like excel more at this thing? And it was something that I had like vehemently resisted going to do because you and Beth had gotten into it. You guys were the ones who like got me into it.
Yeah.
And you were like, you got to try this. I know you're going to like it. And I was like, I don't know. Like, I mean, it feels kind of intimidating. And I'm not sure if I'm, you know, and there's probably nobody other than y'all two who could have gotten me in there in the first place to try it. And then I did. And it was like, whoa, how much of my life just changed because
you went to the gym this one time.
Because I went to the gym this one time. So those are kind of like kind of the moments that you might be talking about. Or similarly, like I know that you've told a couple of stories before about like your middle school years where maybe you were still kind of like clinging on to some of the things that we talk about to this day, like the fandom type stuff,
sure,
you know, whether it's Pokemon or Power Rangers or, you know, like Disney stuff or Harry Potter or whatever. And
right.
I know you've told a story where like one of your friends was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're still into that. Like that's lame.
Right. Yes.
And all of a sudden, you know, you're like, oh, like I should pivot or something.
Right.
Or I should hide.
Right.
A portion
Exactly.
Of this. It's like if you were to go and like talk to any of those guys now and be like, yeah, like, you know, it really had a massive impact. Like they probably don't even remember saying it.
I know, right?
You know, but like how much were you influenced by...
it bothers me so much that could be true. But then I'm also like, but now here I am.
Yeah.
You know, like
I know.
So I don't know. It's like, did this one person's passing comment, like when you were in second grade, like change your life in a way that they don't realize, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
I know.
Exactly. So like that's like what I want. It's like that. And obviously it can't exist because it would be so hard to track because there's just not, you know, at least to the best of our knowledge, there's no metadata.
Oh, I know. Yeah. This would be like, it'd be so weird to see like, like this feels like a sort of like in your afterlife, you can sort of see this chart and they're like, here's all the people who had the most influence on you. You're like, I don't even know who this person is.
Right. Yeah.
And they'd be like, yeah, they actually just like invented this one mechanism that like allowed iPhones to be invented. So they're actually really big on like almost every single person's chart who died after the year 2000. Then most people don't even know who they are.
Right. Yeah.
You're like, wow.
One of the most influential people in history created a microchip that was able to power this one thing. And from there, everything else pretty much changed. So they are the most influential person in history and we're never on the cover of Time magazine.
Yeah, right. Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like, would that count? Or would it just be like, no, it had to be like more like people you knew.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, though, like, so my thought experiment here, like that I was sort of like laying down was almost like, okay, so who are the people most likely to have like the biggest percentages in terms of like this influence on your life?
Right.
So like if you were to get there and assuming it needed to be like interpersonal in some capacity, and I will put like an asterisk next to that and say like to an extent. So the lineup, and this was like sort of roughly speaking the order that like my mind went to as to like who I imagine would have the most influence on my life, which would be parents, siblings, relationships, friends, teachers, co-workers, bosses, celebrities, religious leaders, and neighbors.
Yeah, those are that sounds like the most likely list.
Yeah. It's like these are all going to be the people, but like it was so funny to me because I was thinking about like a lot of these like different categories and going back to like specific moments of my life, and it was like, you know, it is interesting to me like how much of like my decision to buy like like the last one on the list I had there was like Neighbors,
right?
You know, and this is sort of like that keeping up with the Joneses mentality, I guess, a little bit. And so like for example, for me, like I think about the fact that I have like my Toyota truck that I drive, which you know is not like a huge integral piece of my personality, but I do really love my truck and I do think it like feels like my truck when I see it. But for the longest time I would have said that like Toyota was generally a brand that I was like, nah, that's not really like, that's not me,
that's not you.
It's like Toyotas, and this is like the most ridiculous, and like especially now as I'm older it feels ridiculous, but it's like those are too reliable for me, you know, like like you know what I mean, like people who want like there's not enough flair, you know, like those are like vehicles that are built for like consistency, and you like, you know, they drive them forever, but like less from like a personality note, more from like a like it's the right choice
note.
Yeah.
No, I know what you mean. Like that's you know, it's a fine product, but I'm not here for reliability. You know, I'm someone who lives on the edge, and you can handle a minor breakdown. Okay.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like you know, I'm of course going to go for something with a little more flavor, if you will. But but the thing was is that like I remember moving into my current house, my across the street neighbors, I very affectionately refer to as the perfect family because they're so great about just like everything, you know, like whenever it's like the exact right moment to like decorate for the holidays. Not only have they done it like right on cue, but they've got like such a good like aesthetic to it, and it's all just right, and everything about, you know, and you know, like they both drove you know, like Toyotas, and I remember just being like, yeah, you know, and it was like as I was getting like I had lived there for a couple of years when I went and bought my truck, and it's like that influenced that decision. Like if I had moved to a different house, I wouldn't have bought the truck I currently drive.
Oh, that's interesting.
I know. It's like it definitely was like something where I had very affectionately started referring to these people as like the perfect family. And as a result, I think what was happening is exactly the sentiment of like the Keeping Up with the Joneses or whatever. But it was like in some small, very intangible, never spoken aloud way, I was like, like I was affected by just having lived near them.
Yeah.
And I was like, but it's interesting, you know, like, cause I mean, then I have an entire group of memories, an entire group of decisions, like an entire group of things that I've done, you know, like even like with my truck, whether it was getting like the camper or the boat, or like learning how to like pull a trailer, or
like owning this piece of equipment opened up doors of opportunity to owning other things that you either did or didn't do.
Yes, and each of those things has also had like subsequent then like cascading learning experiences where it was kind of like the camper, for example, I've always thought about it was like the worst financial decision that I've just ever made ever. Like I feel like I would typically attempt to pride myself on like doing an okay job at not like finding myself like upside down, you know, in a product that I've purchased. And you know me, like I'm like everything's for sale all the time.
Right.
Like,
yes, I do know that.
I don't have a lot of like sentimental attachment to like the object. So it's like, you know, something might serve a purpose for me for a while, and then if it has like, you know, gone past its expiration date, then it's like, okay, well, I'll just, you know, I'll sell that thing, use the resources once again to do the next thing that I want to do. You know, but the camper was such a case where like when Alice and I were going and looking at them, which again, great date idea is just go look at campers because it's just fun. I stand by that to this day. Like going like walking through them and touring them and being blown away at how much is inside of this.
Yeah, like how do they do this? It's like such small living.
Box on wheels. There's like a TV that comes out of a fireplace. And, you know, it's like, what?
It's like you go and see that stuff and you're like, why are more of these things just incorporated into my regular, like if this is how much they did in a small space, I have big space.
Yeah.
Why aren't I utilizing it better?
Right. Yeah. But so they have to. And like I think what we kept finding was we were like, you know, as you're going through it, we're like, you know, for the same amount, we could get like the really big one. It's like, of course you want the really big one. And then it was like, you know, the really big one is kind of a problem because it's super hard to pull. It's very heavy. It destroys gas mileage.
Right.
Like it takes up my whole driveway is gone.
Yeah.
Like, you know, so again, you know, it's so interesting just to see like what was the ignition point? What was the start of everything that like came in its wake,
right?
You know, and you could probably even backpedal even further from there, and you know, try to examine like, well, what made me choose
the house you lived in,
the house I lived in, like,
right?
You know, at the time it was like 2.5 of a mile from your house,
right? So
like the day that you bought your house.
Yeah,
my house became.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's like, oh, this would be nice to live near Jay. So well, look in this neighborhood.
Exactly. Yeah. So like, I mean, that's obviously like the thread you can pull where you can probably keep going further and further and further backwards. But even like in a different sense, you know, Dad has all the home videos of us from growing up, and so. One of the ones he had just like recently like uploaded to like a family YouTube channel that's just private was like 1994, I think. And it was the year that I would have started like kindergarten.
Yeah.
And so Alice and I, and this is actually what started me on this particular topic, was like walking into my kindergarten class. I had this teacher, Miss Tavener, and it was like just like the group of people that were in my class.
Right.
You know, like my first like friends that I ever made.
Right.
You know, the fact that she was like a new teacher and I was sort of like, you know, like one of like her first classes ever, and probably like the impact that, like, from her perspective, I have to imagine that we were like that much more memorable of a class simply because like we were like the first one that she taught. And like, you know, all of those things, it's like I could have just as easily have been like randomly assigned to a different kindergarten teacher.
Absolutely.
And I mean, I guess this is just sort of like the you know, a much more personalized version of imagining a multiverse. You know?
Oh, that's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, I've thought about that before too. It's just like, you know, Luke's going to be starting kindergarten in the fall, which is crazy if you ask me. But yeah, like I think back to like, when I walked into kindergarten on the first day, like literally the first day, within like 10 minutes, I met the two kids who had become like my best friends for the next 7 years.
Right.
You know, like that was it. It was in those 10 minutes. And they were like my two best friends for like my entire childhood, you know,
to go on to say that Power Rangers are lame.
One of them was one of those kids. Yeah. You know what? Kids aren't always nice. It's okay.
No, of course. Yeah.
That's all right. They didn't know what they were saying.
Right.
They might not even thought they was mean. They might have been like, I'm helping you, dude. Like, you gotta, that's going to be socially not so good. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, right.
You
right.
know,
Yeah.
Who's to say? Anyway, that was not the case, but, point is like the way that affected like our parents is like, well, now my kids are always hanging out with their kids, and like our parents became like best friends with their parents, and like they went on like trips and ran marathons and like, you know, had massive impacts on each other's lives. And it's just like, it's great. Like, you're right. Like what if we'd been in a different classroom that year? Like, would I've had different best friends? Probably.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's another one too, like where like from my end of it, I remember that I had this like just really unlucky draw, which was simply that like my three best friends in kindergarten, by third grade, it was the same thing. And I'm sure that like even on some level, like I was witnessing your friendships and the way that they had like solidified into like our family's like, you know, environment. Like mom and dad were just like friends with all of the parents and all the rest of everything. So like I've got like my group of friends, and like by third grade, one of them had gone to private school and like moved away from my school system entirely. One of them had moved to Indiana, and the other one moved to Delaware.
Yeah, so like you just had this like unfortunate rotating door of like friends who would like you would be really good friends with, and then they'd leave.
And then they would leave. Yeah. And so it's like even that, you know, it's like going back to like the start of the conversation, it's like, what if the reason that I have a hard time dancing is because it was like you go back to these like kindergarten years and I had like let my guard down not even let my guard down. You don't even have a guard at that point in the first place.
Right.
You put your guard up in reaction to these like little moments. And it's like, you know, you find yourself then like later, you know, feeling this very, very, very like misplaced, like lack of security in a social environment that has literally absolutely nothing to do with anything that actually, like, these were parents who got job offers in different places.
Right.
You know, but like the day that those parents got the job offers, like my life changed.
It affected your life in a way. Yeah. And it's like, you don't think about that. Oh gosh. Speaking about, this exact, almost this exact sort of thing about like dancing and like kids and how they could have effect on you or whatever. I remember, I think it was the first time I ever went to 4-H camp. They have like the dance or whatever at the end, and I think it was still like an elementary school, so it might have only been like a 2-day camp or something instead of like a full week or something. But I remember like we were just all there, and you weren't even like trying to like dance with girls or anything yet. It was just like they're just having music playing and the lights are on and it's fun. And I was whatever, we were just like dancing. And I was doing something, and some kid was like, "That's not dancing. That's lame" or something. And like I remember like in that moment, I was like so embarrassed. Like I was like, well, that's pretty much it. Never did that again ever in my whole life. And it was like I don't even know who that kid was. Right. Yeah. But it's like I think back, it's like that kid affected me for like over a decade. You know, like it was just like, well, doing this is not cool. Never mind. Ooh, man, this is not for me. This is not for me. And it's like before that, zero inhibitions about it, Yes. Just like, this is fun. This is cool. And it's like, Matt, it's like so frustrating that something like that got in your head by some stranger, effectively,
Yeah. This is like where I think it'd be so interesting, like to try to find. I mean, this is a podcast idea that will never happen, but it would be like to literally just find all of these people in your life and just be like, I wonder if I could figure out who it was.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like because obviously, again, you know, this goes back to the fact that it's like you're talking about like a 10-year-old who just like for
who's
all
dealing with their own insecurities.
Exactly.
Or whatever. Yeah.
Right. It's like maybe they saw you and were like, man, he's like having so much more fun than me. So it's like I don't want that to be the case. So you know, I'm gonna say this thing.
Right.
But I mean, yeah, it's interesting and probably I'm sure we're putting, you know, now through the lens of like history and looking at things retroactively, we're probably putting these like massive like reverberations onto these individual moments.
Who knows?
But yeah. But I have I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting to just to like think back on. And that's why I thought it was such a fascinating topic to bring up here on the pod, because I was like, I bet you anything that like just the notion of talking about it will spark memories for other people where they're like, man, my third grade teacher was blank.
Right.
You know, like really nice, really mean, really influential, saw something in me that someone else didn't.
Right. Yeah. There's like a bazillion of these moments throughout life.
Right.
And, you know, who's to say which one was the most impactful, or if there's things that happened to you that you won't even remember because they were like good things, or just like, oh yeah, maybe I just didn't make this tiny decision one day.
That's also true. Yeah. It's like how many really, really, really amazing things happen in your life that like we again, you know, you talk about it like being sort of like on the internet and everything. It's like you could post something and get nothing but just like positive feedback, overwhelmingly like, you know, this is so heartwarming. I love this. This was so creative, like all this good stuff. And one person will drop in that mean comment, and it's like that's the one that will stick with you for like months.
Oh, I know,
like,
right?
You know, I'm still thinking about it.
Yeah.
You know, and oh gosh, where was I going with this? Oh yeah, but like memories, it's exactly the same thing. You know, it's like I've very like, you know, consistently told the story of like the speech contest that I was in, like where you know, like it was totally this just like terrible situation for every single person involved, but the very abbreviated version is basically that they were announcing the awards. They had read the things backwards after announcing me as the winner.
Yeah.
And then I had to go back and like hand the plaque back or whatever. You know, it was like obviously like a really bad day, but then like compared to the fact that like that same school year, I was like the lead in the school play. You know, and it's like the being chosen to be the lead in the school play didn't bolster me as much as this speech contest thing seems to have like hindered me.
Yeah.
You know, but like why should that even be the case either?
Right.
You know, like it should be like, no, like, you know, both of these were situations where you're going to be going in front of a group of people. There was one person who made you feel less confident about it, another person who should have made you feel more confident about it, but like, you know, one of them stuck.
Right.
And so, I don't know. Probably something you could reflect on and and try to be more proud of yourself for the good thing and less disappointed in the bad thing.
That's oh man, if only. It's so hard. Yeah, when you're reading your list, the one that like came to mind afterward was like literally like the thing that isn't on there is strangers. But
oh, good point. Yeah.
But then you think like what you were saying like on comments on YouTube or on Twitter or something.
Yeah,
it's like people can be like so mean or hit you like like that one comment would like stick with you, and it's like you don't even know these people,
right?
And like that's the one. And it's like ruining like your whole day is ruined by some stranger on the internet who said something that like that made you feel upset,
right?
And it's like that is frustrating because then it can affect like how you do stuff. Like I always think like once upon a time when we were on vacation at the beach. And like, you know, a dad wanted to go deep sea fishing or whatever.
Yeah.
And we went and, you know, like, you just reel in whatever bites or whatever. And we happened to reel on sort of this like semi-large like shark. And it was, you know, took a picture. I was like, oh my God, I caught a big shark. This is so fun.
Right.
You know, like what? And like at no point in my life had anyone ever communicate like, no one had communicated anything to me about fishing other than that it was like awesome and big fish is better.
Right.
And,
yeah.
You know, it had always been received like positively. I was like, this is going to be, I was like so excited to like go put it on Instagram. And I was like, this is like what a cool picture I'm about to have here.
Yep.
And man, like that was not the reception. Like
I remember this. It went horribly in the other direction.
Yes, like people were just like so offended that what bit the end of my line was a shark, and that we took a picture of it. Like we released it, we didn't kill it or anything.
Oh yeah,
and I was just like, this is not how I expected this to go. I remember I like took the picture down, and it like upset me for like days. Like the whole vacation was just like, man. And it's like, what was I supposed to do?
I know. And I mean, it's like, it's such a difficult, like, kind of expectation of like just general awareness about everything all the time.
Yeah.
And, it's like, it's very interesting because I feel like even like that phrase of like the sort of like the like educate yourself, which is like a good thing. Like, you should be trying to do like everything you can to be like aware of topics, especially topics that are like, extremely present at like the heart of our society and stuff like that. So like, I'm not like obviously in any way, shape or form remotely against that idea. Like that's obviously always the thing that we should all be striving to do. It's those difficult situations where like, yeah, like basically what happened was like the entire construct of your brain got like a little bit like turned upside down. It's like, we grew up fishing, like this was something that like we would go out and do like, with our dad, and it was like sort of like a very like recreational thing, and it was like something that like we could be like super stoked about and like excited about and everything.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like this is not even like a topic you would have known to be prepared to have like needed to be educated more about, like in a capacity.
It would have been the sort of thing that you felt like you were educated about.
Right,
It's like this wasn't the first time I'd ever been fishing.
Right.
I've been fishing like my whole life. And,
right.
It had like only ever been celebrated or like seen as this like bonding thing or this like fun thing to do. And some people, that was not the reception.
I know.
And it was, you're right. It's like, I don't know. It is this weird thing where it's like the expectation to be educated on every single thing. But then like people having different experiences with those educations, I suppose.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And so like in a similar capacity, we could possibly make a small tangent here to a topic that's maybe like pretty centerfold at the moment. So you and I talked a lot last week about like the AI
indeed
chatbot.
Right.
That's sort of like this really just unbelievably fascinating piece of like just technology that's, sort of like developing right before our eyes. And you and I both watched the same video, but MKBHD, who's like a really popular, like tech YouTuber, did this like totally mind-bending video on this exact topic. And so if you don't want spoilers, just like skip ahead, like, a minute and a half or something, and you'll probably get through the part what I'm about to say. But he basically starts the video and just like launches into like, like explaining like what it is and how it's being used in the world and like all this type of stuff. And like whether or not like him as like a creator could potentially be replaced by something like artificial intelligence and like, this whole thing. And he basically gets to like the end of, I don't know, maybe like a minute's worth of talking. And he's like, if any of that, like, I don't even know how he phrases it.
The whole thing. Yeah. His whole like speech though is about how like, no, absolutely. It could never happen for all these reasons. And then you're right. He finishes and he's like, but here's the thing. That whole script was written by an AI bot.
Yes, exactly. So like he had asked the bot to write a script about the potential for AI to replace him in the voice of MKBHD. And the AI did it.
Yeah.
And so like the first minute of this video, the entire script has been written by the very thing he's talking about.
Yeah.
So it's extremely mind-blowing. It's really crazy. And the speed at which the technology is coming out is just like it's kind of like unreal. I think that's sort of how I described it last week. It's just like, a lot of times you can see like a new piece of technology and like you can wrap your head around it, and like it's possible that there's like a simple explanation as to how it's working now in a way that would be like, okay, like I can sort of like imagine a world where it's sort of like if you Google a question, for example, a lot of times Google will like auto-populate like other questions that you might be curious about on the basis of that question.
Right.
You know, it's like maybe all it's doing is using like existing digital infrastructure and then like polishing it in such a capacity that like it makes it seem like more genuine, but all it really did was just Google something for you and like figure out the best answer based on like the already known existing results, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, okay, like I can sort of get that, but I don't know if that's how it works.
Yeah.
But so on the flip end of the spectrum, though, the other piece of AI that's been super popular, and I'm sure that you've seen a lot of coverage about it, if not just a lot of images about it, is through a company called Lensa.
Lensa, that's been the really popular app. I think there's a few of them, but that's like the one that you're probably seeing the posts on your Instagram and your Twitter feed where, yeah, you feed in like 10 to 20 picture like selfies of yourself or of, you know, any given person, and it will spit out like 50 like awesome looking curated like profile images that you might use for like social media or something.
Yeah, and the really fascinating thing about it is that like it's like images of yourself where like they're like real, like a lot of them could be like a movie poster or something. You're like, man, this is like I've never gotten the opportunity to like see myself depicted in this like really cool way.
Oh, I know. And it's like it is really cool. Like even I think probably the people most likely to have ever had themselves depicted in this sort of way are people who are like either celebrities or else like online influencers who wanted to have like some special art created for their profiles or something.
Yes.
So
yeah.
it's like, but like for, you know, your average person, you probably haven't like commissioned a portrait of yourself in some, you know, cool art style. And you've probably played around with tons of filters on your phone. And sometimes it's like, you know, something funny or cool looking will pop up. But this like creates like very cool images of yourself.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's impressive. It's cool to look at. And it's like, man, wow, fun. I would say some results are better than others. Like, you know, me and you did it, and all the results basically looked like you and me.
Yeah.
Beth did it. It did not look like her at all.
Right. Yeah. It was like a completely different portrayal.
Yeah.
So,
it was very weird.
You know, it's certainly not, you know, certainly not perfect, but like then enters sort of this like ethical conversation about like, well, where is the, you know, the app itself getting like the images from? And like, you start to like realize there's this like, okay, well now there's a whole bunch of artists who have created the original works that are now being used like sort of by like this AI to create the images that you're ultimately seeing.
Right.
And this is, I think, like exactly what like MKBHD said, where he's like, I'm not a lawyer. Like I'm not qualified
right.
to like talk on like I don't know whether or not there's like transparency involved or anything like that. Like when it comes to like how you're using this media, like, you know, for example, like in a standard Super Carlin Brothers video, like we'll, you know, regularly use like a movie clip to help explain like the topic that we're trying to explain. And, you know, all, like under, you know, all instances, it's all fell under like fair use. Like you didn't come to our Super Carlin Brothers video
to experience Toy Story.
Exactly.
Right.
Even though you might see like an iconic moment from Toy Story included.
Yeah. No one would argue that having watched our video, you had received the intended product from Pixar.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So like there's sort of like that potential, like, you know, as you like look at this image that's maybe like a conglomerate of images, it's like, is it any one or is it like a mixture of like 10 million, but like also like where did the 10 million come from in the first place? And so it's like, I can't really even begin to wrap my head around it, but like this was another one of those instances where it's like there is like a red flag involved, and it reminded me, I just thought of this over the weekend a little bit, but it reminded me a lot of the music industry with like Napster and like LimeWire, which were like just, you know, pirating music back in like the early 2000s, and it was like it was such a commonplace activity.
Oh yeah.
Like I didn't know anybody who didn't do it.
Yeah.
You know, like it was just like the way that, and I mean, it was like one of these things. It was like, especially if that was happening now, like it would have so much attention because it would be such an obvious, like so much like content from all these artists and stuff that was just being like literally freely distributed.
Right. And it's like, it feels like a very good comparison. Cause like, I remember at the time, like no one even thought twice about it. It almost felt like this is how it should be.
Sure.
You know, like you know, as a 13-year-old who never had access to like money to purchase lots of CDs or anything.
Right.
And it was just like, you know, what, like, how's it different from listening to the radio, you know, or whatever.
Well, I mean, that's the rationale again of a middle schooler who just,
yeah,
you know.
yeah, exactly. And that's like, 13-year-old middle schooler who's just like, I just want to listen to the music, whatever.
Right. And not to mention, it's also been, 15, 20 years since the world where you could just regularly gain access to a single song, like was even available in the first place. Like back in the day, like if you wanted to like now, if you want to listen to something, you can always go and find just like one song from the album and the one song that you like. But, in the early 2000s or before that, like you had to go and like buy like the whole CD.
Yeah.
Or
the single.
Or the single. Yeah. If you could track it down. So things, I don't know, just very, very different. But like, I feel like the internet brought enough of like the wild, wild west to this like equation that it was almost like the internet was outpacing the speed at which like lawyers and Congress and
the record industry.
Yeah. And just the general like zeitgeist of like, of the human like consensus, like whether or not it was able to come to the conclusion as to what was happening by this like mass redistribution and sharing of all of this media. And so I feel like right now that's exactly where we're in. And I feel like this is where like the light has very quickly been shown on it in a way that I'm sure we will see a lot of stuff get figured out in relation to like artificial media very quickly. Like I think it will be solved very fast. Like I think that people will like realize like, hey, this is a problem. It's a new territory, and therefore like we need to figure out like what the correct way to go about it.
Right. Yeah. Like what even is. And like, I would totally recommend if you have been seeing some like of the edges of this argument, or if you've been, if you've tried the app and people have yelled at you or for it or whatever, like I would recommend go watching the MKBHD video, because it does such a good job like breaking down like what's actually happening.
Yeah.
Because like sure enough, this was almost very similar to the shark thing. Like I got all those like I did it. I went, then I paid like the $8 or whatever. I was like, all right. I even felt good about paying for it, because like now like I did it. I bit the bullet. It wasn't like free.
You contributed to someone.
Right.
It just may be the case that it was like the wrong pot.
Yeah. And then like I got the images back and I was like, these are so cool. Like even, like not only like just even just being like, look, man, I'm just impressed with the AI. And I put it on Instagram, and sure enough, people were like, you really should be careful about what you post. Like this is stealing from artists. And there was some people, of course, were like, these are amazing. I love these. And thank you to all those people. But it was just like one of those things like, should I be feeling like super bad about this? Like, I don't like what you're like, and you start looking into it. And I think, the best video I've seen has been the MKBHD one, where, and the basic explanation he gives is that like, for sure, these like there are people who made original arts, and then you can even tell like if you look in the bottom corner of some of like the recreations on the bots, there's a messed up signature where it's like trying to, it's like, oh, I guess a squiggly goes here, right? Like that's what the machine has learned. Like they don't know it's a signature or how to sign their name or anything. They just like put it there, and it's like, so obviously this was like copied from somewhere else. But it like the way like I was receiving it in the comments was like this bot is going into like stealing artists' work, and he's like, well, like it's very tricky to know legally even what's supposed to be happening here, right? Like what's really happening is like artists are putting it up, and then there's this other site that is like scraping the internet for like open source images, and it's finding these images from these artists, and then the AI bot is actually going to that site and using those images. So it's not like going onto your like DeviantArt profile and like stealing your images. It's like it's from an open source thing. And it's like, should that website be doing that, or should your initial posting location be more secure? Or it's just like no one really knows who's to blame here, right? And and that's the thing. So like I think that like the question is almost like the scraping of the information almost seems like it's legal, but like it's like as long as you're not selling that information. And then like I think the issue is almost maybe then like this other company is like, so they're not selling the information, like maybe it's just like this open database of information, right? But then another company is using
that database's information in order to influence its final product, and they are selling that final product.
But
and
that
it's like,
final product is still like transformed and different from the original.
Yes.
But it's like so clearly like ripped off from it. But yeah.
Right. So you can see like where the gray area becomes. But like, again, to compare like the fishing example to this example, it's like you can find yourself in this position where it's like filters have been such a thing, like we've seen it over the past decade of our lives. It's like how many different fun, like Snapchat filters or like, I think I downloaded Snapchat for the first time ever, specifically just like 5 years ago or something, and used it for like 3 days because there was like a voice changing filter on it. And it was kind of like, wow, like I downloaded Snapchat literally just so that I could use this one filter, like effectively one time.
Right.
But like since then, you've seen, hundreds of thousands of like filtered images and looks and face tunes and, just this, that, and the other. And so it's like the roadway leading up to like that moment, like where you might be like, yeah, I want to try like the AI thing. It looks really cool. It's like, it's all supported by such an existing database of knowledge that is everything that came before the moment like that you did that. But it's like all of a sudden what happened is it's like something that has like been perceived as like a pretty regular and common behavior for such a long period of time. It's like it had officially like potentially crossed the line, a very gray and squiggly line, albeit, but like this is like the first time after like hundreds of thousands of other experiences where you might have found yourself like in a position where like things are not how they always have been.
Right.
And like that's where I think I'm not really like frustrated with anybody for being like upset on behalf of the artist. Like I completely get that. Like I think that's what will bring the right, like, that noise will bring the attention to the thing that needs attention, and that will like yield.
It will fix it.
It will fix it. And then like hopefully what that will mean is that like all these artists will now be like properly compensated, and like there is a world where like some really cool stuff might come from this, and everybody will feel good about how it's happening.
Right.
The problem is that we're just not quite there yet.
Right.
And I think the awareness or whatever that like in my mind I would like encourage or whatever is mostly just like the thought of like it all comes down to like the tact, it's like the way in which you like communicate an idea to someone else, because it's like you could go back to like that 4-H camp dance, and you're dancing and like somebody like said something to you that like made you feel like a visceral reaction. And it's like, is that in any way, shape, or form similar to like getting like a visceral reaction now? It's like your knee jerk, like when somebody like, like raises a voice at you or gets like angry or something, it's like typically your reaction to that is not going to be like, I should side with this person who's yelling at me.
Right.
Like,
I know.
It's like, and that's the thing. Like, that's the thing that like, I so desperately like, just seeing Facebook arguments, comment arguments, like trolls on the internet, not trolls on the internet, like, any of these things. It's like, we just got to figure out how to like work together a little bit more. Like,
right.
Like they're like, we almost need like classes on how to like communicate people to like give them like a, like, what is a helpful nudge instead of a condescending like shout,
right,
if you will. But at the same rate, it's like it's one of those situations where it's like very frequently it is that shouting that gets the attention that is necessary for something good to happen. And this is where like again my brain's just not big enough to comprehend what like ultimately is all necessary in order to like trudge the world forward towards that kind of progress.
Right. Yeah. I don't know either. I typically land on the side of like, even if you're correct, it's not okay to be mean to people about it.
Yes.
And that is definitely not the opinion of like so much of social media. It's just like, oh, I'm definitely on the right side of this. And therefore, if you're not, I can be a complete like butthead to you. And it's just like that is the same. You're doing the same.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
like that's piousness is what that is.
Yeah.
It's like being on the right side of the argument is no excuse to be a jerk to people about it.
Yeah. It's, or I think the phrase I've said before is like using the moral high ground to be like condescending.
Yeah.
It's like you've found yourself in like a vicious cycle where you are now like both on the moral high ground and below it by having been condescending.
Right.
Because it's like yes, but no, like, because you're right, but the way in which you're right might be wrong. Like,
Right.
But again, I don't know if I can always like fully comprehend the situation. A lot of times I realize like I've stepped into a conversation. It's almost like walking in on two people arguing, and you're like, I don't know. I don't know enough about what's going on. I don't know what's happened. I don't know what's happened before what's happened. And therefore, like, I'm just going to slowly fade into the shadows.
General rule of thumb, just be nice. You know?
Yeah.
Hey, be nice.
What a philosophy.
Yeah. Wow.
There profound. Anyway, should we transition?
Okay, Ben, I'm having like a really good PR week myself.
Hey, how about that? Fantastic.
Yeah, it's been pretty good. So we just, even before we got here, you guys know we've campaigned before on this very show to be in the Roanoker, the magazine that is published here that does like their best of Roanoke every year. This year we won best influencer and best podcast and best YouTube channel in Roanoke.
Ayo.
Whatever. We had a billboard about it and everything, which I don't think you ever even saw in person.
I never even saw it in person.
Man.
I couldn't believe it. I know. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
but it was like one of the one of the best elements of surprise you've ever pulled off ever.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I was genuinely and completely, utterly shocked.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's what I'm always going for. So this, I guess in January, they'll be releasing their issue for the 40 under 40 in Roanoke. And you and I both were on the list this year.
Ayo!
It's pretty exciting. So they sent us the articles this morning. That was pretty nice. It's like, that's oh man, that's like, it feels pretty cool.
It does feel very cool. Yeah, it's definitely one of those things. And again, going back to like those childhood experiences, like I remember, I think it was like 1996 or 1997. Dad was like on the cover of the magazine for being, you know, like the local newscaster in the area, and it was like one of these things where it was just like, well, now I need to
that's it.
It's like in my mind, it's like at some point in my life I need to have achieved that.
Right.
There
you go.
That place. So we're not on the cover or anything like that, but like it's like we're you know, it's like this is really cool to me. Like it has so much more meaning because of what it meant to me as a kid. This is like you know, 8-year-old Ben has achieved a goal that like started then.
Right.
So that's really cool and fun. And then the other cool thing is that you also in the same week had your alma mater, Virginia Tech, do a article about you.
Yeah, it was very exciting. Yeah, they did an interview with me like a little while ago, just about like being on YouTube and like how, you know, did Virginia Tech influence that and how did we help prepare, you know, of course from them the university's perspective, they want it to look like, yes, we are hugely a part of this person's success, which is of course true.
Right. Yes.
You know,
your influence ancestry data map or whatever would probably have like a little like maroon and orange filled in checkerboard block for Virginia Tech there.
For sure there. So yeah, but it was a very nice article. It was very nice. Our friend John Jennings was quoted in the article. That was fun. They interviewed him and he was like, I talked to him about it this weekend. He was like, oh man, I didn't know what to say. I was afraid I was going to say something wrong, but it all came out very good.
It was really cool.
They even like interviewed some of my old professors, which was interesting. And I was like, oh man, no way. I can't believe they would even remember me. So that was cool.
That's very cool.
So yeah, it was posted on like the liberal arts page like last week, and I've been informed that it'll be posted on like just like the main Virginia Tech page like this week at some point. So that's kind of exciting.
It's super exciting.
Like, oh my gosh, really? No way. So that's been pretty cool. But I bring it all up, Ben, because clearly my collegiate alma mater, Virginia Tech, took enough notice in our career to think that I was notable enough to put me and effectively Super Carlin Brothers on the front page of the website. And so I feel like maybe
our high school's Wikipedia page,
maybe our high school Wikipedia page at Cave Spring High School needs to update the notable alumni section.
Oh my God. Our 3-year campaign in the making.
Exactly.
Oh my God. It is hilarious. Although I remember, so early on when we first brought this up, this was like one of those things, and we have been, I know I got a couple of emails where like, you shouldn't like, you know, encourage people to go through and like, you know, edit the page or whatever.
Look, you shouldn't if it's not true.
Well, that's the thing. So what has been pointed out a whole bunch to us was like, we got to have like actual publications that like demonstrate the information that you're trying to like say is true, because Wikipedia is like a page that operates on its sources.
Right.
Like which on the very whole, I feel like very interesting, like going back to high school for a moment, like whenever you're writing a research paper, you're always disallowed from using Wikipedia as a source, which makes sense since it's not a source itself. It's using sources to write itself.
Oh my gosh. What they need to include when they're teaching you that in school is like, you can't use Wikipedia as a source, but just look for the citation number and go to the primary source at the bottom and just use that.
That's the thing, is it's a great working example of how sources are being used to write something effectively.
And instead what they're doing is like, don't look at it.
Yeah, don't go near. And probably, to be fair, again, it's like, you're talking about the Wild West of the internet, and it's like nobody really knows like how or what or whatever. Like I do remember, at the very least, in a world history class, there was an instance where there was a question that was asked and the teacher said it was wrong, and that person edited the Wikipedia page to say that it was right and then used that to win an argument with the teacher. So it's possible that at points in time there was that the checks and balances needed to be built out more, which they obviously since have been, given that we are talking about it right now. But yeah, it's been a really cool year. Like we've had a couple of things that have come out that have spotlighted it. So I don't know what all it takes. I don't know whether or not there's like someone on behalf of the high school that would need to give it a check mark or something. That would seem like a very surprising email for the principal of Cave Spring High School to get.
Yeah. I don't know. Is it their responsibility? It doesn't feel like it's the staff's responsibility to update the Wikipedia page. You wouldn't think. No. Yeah. So it's definitely a very interesting, I don't know. And I don't know indeed. But here, let me I'll just give you guys a little head start. If anyone wants to reattempt this and you need more sources or anything, we can go through. Look, we've had a pretty fun year in this sort of department.
We have, yeah, it's been
our
cool.
our own dad did the story at WSLS. Yep. That was pretty exciting. There was an article in the Roanoke Times about us. That was pretty great. Now there's an article on Virginia Tech. I think Radford did something.
Radford did a spotlight alumni.
Radford did something. And man, I just had and then the Roanoker. Now we are both listed as 40 under 40. And earlier this year were the best influencers and podcasters and YouTubers in the area. So there are plenty of sources to work with now. Wikipedia.
Yeah. Although you want to know what was freaking awesome about this Roanoker magazine is I got the email this morning and I was like, oh, the digital copy. I'm gonna scroll through and see how it turned out and everything. And I'm scrolling through it, and lo and behold, my wife Alice has an entire article not related to the 40 under 40 about her. It's a half-page article about her new business, Nude. And I was like, man, this is that is so. There's a picture of her and everything in front of the business, and I'm like, what the heck,
man? The number of ways people in your life have hit you with the element of surprise via the Roanoker is unbelievable.
It is absolutely shattering my whole universe, but I'm 100% here for it. It was really cool though. I was like, man, Allie should be on the 40 under 40. So we'll have to nominate her next year.
We will probably have to do that.
We'll remember it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. No doubt. Very exciting stuff all the way around. On the publication front.
We're
finally getting a foothold.
Oh man. Maybe we'll get that blue check mark soon.
Maybe. We'll see. I have to come back to social media to see it though, which I still haven't done.
I'll just tell you.
Yeah, just let me know if we can get a blue check mark. That'd be very exciting. Anyway, guys, as ever, thank you so much for sticking with us for 3 whole years. We hope that you have a wonderful and fantastic holiday season and everything is going well and everyone is safe and warm and cozy and eating delicious food.
Yeah.
If you would like to support us on Patreon, you can do so over at patreon.com/popcornculture, where again, we are in the final days to get access to that exclusive D&D episode that Jay and I will be recording with the crew here and the Super Carlin Brothers office, and that also comes with a complete set of Popcorn Culture customized RPG dice. That's patreon.com/popcornculture. Also, the link to that is in the description or the bio or whichever way you consume your pods. Otherwise, if you have any feedback for today's episode, you can send it over to popcornculturepod@gmail.com. I always love seeing all your emails. Otherwise, until next time,
pop.